Hello, everybody. It's Friday. That means it's time for another topic of the week. This week's topic, well, it's going to be all about conversions. But first, preamble. So, last week's topic was about your favorite miniature kit. And there was a lot of great responses. And what I really appreciated about it was just how broad the number of answers were. That is to say, it wasn't like one kit came down and everybody was like, oh, yes, this is definitely the best thing. It was sort of very reinforcing of the idea that what people enjoy, the reasons they enjoy it are myriad, but also that everyone's sort of personal sense of aesthetic and what appeals to them exactly is just as varied. And there were a lot of answers across the ages. Some people had very old kits or old, sort of going way back to the 90s that they really loved. Some people, brand new stuff really, had tripped them. Maybe it was a little of both. Like me, where I couldn't decide, and so I split the difference. I cheated. I didn't mind if everybody else did as well. There were a lot of great ones there, including, well, great, little bit of a pun. A couple people did mention Empire Greatswords. Those are always a great kit. There was some shout outs to the wonderful, Empire, I don't want to say like Men at Arms kits or whatever. You could make like the Free Company out of them, and of course you could make a million different Mordheim warbands out of them. So I myself did that. I mean, those things became Mordheim warbands all across the world. So there's a lot of deep love there. But the one shout out that was on my list that was close that I didn't get was the good old Chaos Knight. I have always loved the Chaos Knight. I just think there's such a wonderful embodiment of that concept. The horses look dangerous, the armor looks dangerous, but it's not over. I never felt they were over the top. That's just my personal sense of it. That is to say, they don't have necessarily like spikes every 2 inches poking out in every direction. They just look like these very heavily armored, dark, sort of dangerous knights. I always did love that kit. So big shout out there. As always, all the video responses will be linked in last week's video, and that video is of course linked down below. But let's turn to this week's topic, which is going to be more relevant to you when you watch the next video I post. But for the moment, we're going to talk about conversions. So, there's a lot of different ways to convert your miniatures. You can, of course, do some bit swapping, right? You could, doing some head swaps, some weapon swaps, very simple stuff, but it still is some extra personalization. And really, I think a huge, huge, huge part of this hobby is personalization, right? I mean, everything we do is us taking these things, clipping them out, cleaning them up, gluing them together, getting some paint, priming them, painting them, basing them, making them our own. It's a huge, I think, I can't say that word enough, apparently. It's just a very big deal. I've talked before about the sort of upside of the psychological utility of creating your models like that. But conversions are sort of another step where you don't just accept what the modeler gave you, but you really do make that thing your own, not just with the paint job, but with the work you put into it. So as I said, it could start with simple head or weapon swaps. It could go all the way into bashing two kits together, to using green stuff, to make your own new parts of the miniature, to add additional details. If you're in like the 40K world, the world of making purity seals out of green stuff, very common. People do a lot of that on there. But there's obviously a massive range of this. Adding plasticard bits, plasticard and green stuff, it goes on and on and on. So what I want to know is, what do you think of conversions? And by that I mean conversions can also be sometimes controversial, especially if they're sort of very large in the way that they change the model. And some people can sometimes be like, well, you doesn't feel like that thing anymore. And that's a hard sort of line to draw in the sand and to put your finger on, right? I'm sure we've all probably seen something at some point in our gaming career that we're like, wait, that's a what? Okay, whatever you say, and that's fine. I will generally, I don't really care if anybody brings a fig to the table and they tell me that's what it is. That's what it is. I'm not too picky as long as they're not. I had a friend once turn like a can of Coke sideways back when I played 40K and tell me that the can of Coke was a rhino. I didn't feel like he was really going the distance there. But that did spawn a wonderful ongoing joke in our group, so I thank him for that. And so, where's your line, if you can find it, in conversions? Do you mind when people do like really crazy conversions and chop stuff up? Um, I've been well known for loving conversions. The thing I try to say is that anything that's more than an inch tall, i.e., anything bigger than a normal infantry troop, I convert, change in some way to make my own. It's a bit of an obsession for me, especially the more I do it. That's when it really goes off. The more of that thing I've done or painted. Maybe the first one I do kind of stock, but then every other one after that needs to be converted, added to, changed in some way. So that's kind of how I approach it. What do you if you do like conversions? How do you like to convert? Do you stick to simple swaps? Do you want to use green stuff? Are you afraid of doing conversions? I think I hear that a lot. The fear of converting, right? So, as everybody remember, if you're watching this video, you may know that I converted Archaon to change him to be riding a Tzeentch Lord, sort of a Tzeentch flavored Archaon, I guess, riding a mutated Galrock. So I turned it into a three-headed dragon, right? And, you know, that's me hacking at a pretty expensive model with knives and clippers and slapping new stuff on and changing things around. And I'm thrilled that I did it. In the end, it turned out I love the Fig. And I love it more than all the Archaons I see. Whenever I see a stock standard Archaon, I'm like, oh, that's just an it's an impressive model, certainly. But part of me is like, you didn't make that big thing your own. So I think that that's the huge value to me when I see something that I've put the extra conversion into, especially when it's a change like that and I've got a good story behind it. It just feels so much more personalized to me, and it has such a higher like sense of, what do I want to say? Just a sense of maybe pride or happiness or sentimentality. It's hard to define, but there's something there to it. So, are you afraid to chop up those big kits? You know, because you're afraid you might quote unquote ruin it. By the way, I've never seen anybody actually ruin a model. You can always bring it back. Well, I mean, maybe if you just sit there and slam it with a hammer, it's probably done. But for the most part, anything you're going to do in trying to convert, you can bring back. So, there you go. That's the topic this week. Do you like converting your models? What is your sort of line when it comes to conversions that other people do? If you are converting, what types of conversions do you like to do? Do you just stay to simple swaps? Or do you go all the way in? Are you resculpting on everyone like Steve Herner is adding, green stuff cloaks and hats and hoods and stuff to an entire unit of Stormcast, as well as swapping things around? That kind of thing. Where do you fall in that spectrum if you like converting? And if you don't, are you afraid, especially when it comes to bigger, more expensive models? And if so, what do you think stops you? There you go. So that's the topic this week. Looking forward to your responses. As always, any video response will be posted down below, so you can always return to this video to see those. Thanks for watching. We'll see you next time.